So today I want to bring you a comparison between two shoes that I've been enjoying quite a bit actually. So the first one is the Escalante 4, had these for quite a while now. And then the other one is the Torin 8. And this is a little bit new to me, but it's actually been a kind of interesting speed option, but we'll get to that later on. Just a quick note to say that there is an Escalante Racer 2 as well that you can buy. And there are slight differences between the Escalante 4 and the Racer, but they're kind of minor. But if you want to find out a little bit more about that, I do have a video about a comparison between the two anyway, so just go and check that one out. And if you're looking for full reviews on either of these shoes or any shoes that I do, just check out the channel, you'll find all of them on there. Or just look up barefootrunreview.com. So first of all, it's probably best off just saying what are the similarities between these two shoes? Well, they're from Altra and they're from the older traditional line, so they're both completely zero drop, meaning that the heel is exactly the same height as the forefoot around here. Possibly not the toes, and I'll get to that later. Exactly the same on the Escalante, obviously. They do also have the wider toe box on both of these. I would say that the width on both of the toe boxes are kind of similar. They're squared off in a very similar way around the big toe as well. So really, I wouldn't say that either of them are that different. I did find the Torin 8 to be a little bit snug over top at first, but in the end it did actually flatten out and I got a little bit more volume, a little bit more room in the shoe, and it ended up actually pretty decent for me. Whereas the Escalante 4, because the upper is a little bit more flexible, yes, it may have a similar volume, but you just don't feel the top of the shoe just quite as much as you do in the Torin. So it just felt a little bit more roomy in general. So what about the fit of the two shoes? So again, I actually say they fit similar, but the structure of the Torin really makes a difference. So with the Escalante, we've gone back to this older kind of design that we used to see in Escalantes, which have a more flexible upper in general, and also a more flexible heel as well. As you can see, I'm squishing this around completely. It's actually kind of nice, wide and open, kind of like a skate shoe that I used to say. And well, it's just a relaxed fit in general. There is still a bit of secureness, especially through this midfoot here. There might not be quite enough volume for everybody right over the top here, but if you can make it fit, it's kind of nice and secure. This update from the 3, I think, was definitely the right direction. If you liked the Escalante 3, I think it's probably worth looking at the Torin, even though the stack height is a little higher. So the reason why that is, it's a more structured shoe in general. You look at this heel, it's quite stiff there. So you're gonna feel that, and if you need that extra kind of lockdown or a narrower heel that needs to be locked into place, then this could actually be a good thing. So that's a personal preference, I would say. If you're coming from more conventional shoes, you're likely used to a heel more like the Torin. So just keep that in mind. The other side of it is the sidewalls. So if you look at the sidewalls on the Torin here, they actually extend up quite high. And that basically means that you sit in the shoe, and if you're a little bit wider, you may spill over the edges a bit and it will feel uncomfortable because of those higher edges around there. If we look at the Escalante, it does have slightly raised walls, but it's very minor in comparison to the Torin. So that's why I'm saying the Torin is definitely more of a structured shoe in general. And then lastly, that flexibility. It basically gives an air of kind of like structure to it. It feels like a solid block underfoot. Whereas this Escalante, it has a lot more flexibility in it, specifically in the forefoot. It's just worth noting that I go true to size in both of these shoes. That for me is a US size 9, and I find that absolutely fine. If you've had models of Torins and Escalantes in the past, I'd say it's pretty similar too. So as for the feel of these two shoes, they are very different. And that is definitely a good thing, because you do want a differentiator in the actual lineup of the Altra shoes on the road side. Actually, similarities first. Have a look at that outsole, pretty similar. So there is exposed EVA foam under there, specifically around the areas that don't wear quite as much. So yes, this is 24 millimeters in stack height. The Torin 8 is actually 30 millimeters in stack height. And yes, that's a kind of a big difference, but I don't think that's really why they feel so different. The feeling really comes from the stiffness in this Torin instead. You can see that it's really hard to actually bend, specifically around this midfoot as well. So you are forced to kind of roll with the shoe instead. And you'll see a little bit of taper up here. and this will basically push you forward in the shoe. The Escalante does have a bit of a taper, but because of that flexibility, you can see that it even actually flexes down to complete zero drop there. In the end, it feels very different. And I will also say, I believe the Torin 8 has a bit of toe spring as well. And what that means is basically the toes are actually lifted a little bit towards the front of the shoe. Again, basically kind of pushing you forward into that rocker kind of motion. I don't feel that the Escalante has that at all. And if it does, well, there's so much flexibility that you don't really feel that. Then looking at the stability on the lateral side as well. So again, it's all about these side walls of the Torin. So if you aren't spilling over the side, great. Quick note, there is a wide version of the Torin 8 if you do need that and you do have that wider midfoot. I think that's a really good idea. But back to it. So because those sidewalls are a little higher, it basically means you don't fall over the side of the shoe as much. So there's a lot of security in that side-to-side plane. And that will mean that you kind of end up on this straight plane and it forces your foot into a certain movement pattern, which I wouldn't say is a good or a bad thing. It has its benefits in certain areas, but it basically meant for me that it felt very, very stable. So for me, it actually ended up being a bit more of a kind of a speed option. I think it could be your race shoe. Whereas the Escalante, it doesn't have as much of that security and that stability, especially side to side. One, because this upper is a little bit flexible. But two, it doesn't have those sidewalls that come up really high around the side here. You will find that you have to do more work. Your ankles have to do more work. Your feet have to do more work. In general, your body has to do more work. And that is not a bad thing. That is basically why this is Barefoot Run Review. This is why I got into it in the first place. I was trying to train my feet and my ankles and all my lower legs. And it made sense to go into lower stack shoes to do that. I'm not saying that you should do that all the time either. There is a place for this. So there's a place for the Escalante 4. There's a place for a completely minimal shoe. There's also a place for a Torin. As long as your feet are still healthy, I think these are tools and you need to use them when appropriate. One little thing that's worth noting is the tongue on the Escalante is a thinner material and it doesn't have any padding through there. I don't find that to be a problem. I actually kind of like this. It doesn't have any sharp edges around the top, so it's not going to dig into your ankle at all. Whereas we look on the Torin, and the Torin's a nice kind of padded, thinner but padded tongue in there. So if it's one of your preferences, then it's something to think about at least anyway. As for breathability, the wider weave on the Escalante will likely help with breathability. At the same time, the Torin is definitely not a thick material. And as for lockdown, well, if you've got that wider, deeper kind of heel, then the Escalante may be a little bit better for you. But if you've got that narrow heel that needs locking down in there, then maybe this Torin will do pretty good. So what about the durability of either of these shoes? So all in all, I think they're going to be quite similar. They're kind of a similar design in terms of like the outsole being exactly the same. These foams, the Escalante 4 feels a little bit softer, I would say, which usually means it'll pack down a little bit quicker. This Torin is quite stiff, especially out the box, but it does actually get a little bit more pliable over time. But that kind of makes me believe that the midsole of the Escalante will break down a little quicker, but because it's a lower stack shoe, it doesn't matter so much. It just feels a bit flat, and that is actually okay in the end. As for the uppers, I'd probably give it to the Escalante just because this feels a little more reinforced. The open weave, which is kind of thick, it feels a lot more durable, and if I scraped against this, I wouldn't feel like it's going to cut through there at all. Whereas if we look at the Torin can be quite thin in areas, so if you have a high wear area in any of these places, or if you're pushing out the side too much, then maybe you'll see a bit more wear. One thing that is interesting though, because there is less flexibility in here, you probably won't see those same wear patterns that you do see with super flexible forefoot kind of shoes. So if you think about the Escalante here, if you're flexing at that forefoot all the time, it's going to put a lot of stress through this material here. So something just to think about there. So if I was going to give it to one of them, I would probably say the Escalante, purely because of the upper. I think it'd be a little bit better over time. It may flatten out quicker, but that is okay. You can still run the shoe and it will be okay. So what about conclusion? I think these are Completely different shoes. You really need to just work out what do you want from a shoe. So if you're looking for that casual shoe that you do a little bit of walking in, maybe a bit of running, and you want a relaxed feel, comfortable feel, I think the Escalante is definitely the way to go. Because this is definitely just a relaxed fit, which is completely zero drop with that wide toe box, and it's just comfortable in general. If you're primarily focused on more races or faster speeds, or you want that higher stack height, or you don't want to put as much stress through your feet, then the Torin comes into its own. It's a lot more stable, it's a lot more structured. If that's where you're at right now, that is okay. Or if that is the tool that you need right now, that is also okay. If you're coming from a conventional brand, maybe a Hoka or a Nike or something like that, then I would go into a Torin first, because it's just that little bit more similar to the conventional brands, whereas going straight into an Escalante could be a bit much for your feet and ankles, and well, we don't want to get injured. But I would still say graduate into these kind of shoes because they can be good for your foot health in the long run. If weight is a concern, then the Escalante is 10 to 15 grams lighter, and you can actually feel it as well. But in the end, because they are so different in terms of shoes, I didn't really feel the weight on my feet as much. And as for pricing, we've got a $20 difference between the two. So the Torin 8 coming in at 150 and the Escalante 4 coming in at 130. There's a minor difference there. And if you manage to pick any of them up on offer, well, yeah, that'll be good. I use them both because they're both tools and they both work in different situations.